If money keeps avoiding you, it's not because you're unlucky. It's because you're too easy to reach, too predictable, too available. And the world punishes that harder than failure. Let me tell you something. No school, no mentor, no motivational poster ever told you. The moment you became accessible, your value began to decay, not morally, economically, psychologically. From childhood, you were trained like a product designed for mass consumption. Be nice, be helpful, be responsive, answer fast, explain yourself, smile when uncomfortable. It sounded virtuous, it felt safe, but it quietly rewired how the world prices you. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men sense but never articulate. The world does not reward effort, it rewards leverage. And leverage is impossible when everyone has unlimited access to you. Think about this for a moment. Why does scarcity inflate prices instantly? Why does exclusivity trigger obsession? Why does silence create more power than explanation ever could? This isn't philosophy, it's biology. Your nervous system reacts to what is rare as valuable before logic ever enters the room. The brain assigns importance to what it cannot easily predict or possess. And the inverse is brutal. What is always available is subconsciously classified as disposable. Every time you reply instantly, every time you over-explain, every time you lower your standards to avoid discomfort, you teach people exactly how cheaply you can be acquired. And here's where it gets dangerous. Men don't stay poor because they lack skill. They stay poor because they behave like commodities instead of assets. And commodities are priced down, always. You've seen this pattern play out, even if you never named it. The man who is always there is never respected. The man who is endlessly agreeable is never feared. The man who over-delivers without boundaries is quietly drained. But the man who withdraws access, who withholds attention, who refuses to explain himself, who doesn't rush to prove his worth, that man triggers tension, curiosity, and eventually payment. Centuries before algorithms, before invoices, before social media, Machiavelli understood something terrifyingly simple. Power lives in perception, not possession. And perception is controlled by distance. The ruler who is seen too often becomes familiar. The familiar becomes predictable. The predictable becomes weak. Now apply this to money. Money does not move toward goodness. It does not reward kindness. It does not care about fairness. Money moves toward authority, toward structure, toward men who behave like access to them is costly. This is why the hardest working man in the room is often the poorest, and the most selective man often controls the room without raising his voice. But here's the twist most people miss, and this is where everything changes. Becoming expensive is not about arrogance. It's not about acting cold. It's not about pretending you're better than others. It's about withdrawing unconscious permission. Permission to interrupt you, permission to waste your time, permission to extract your energy without consequence. The moment you remove that permission, the hierarchy reshapes itself around you. And here's the uncomfortable question you need to sit with before we go any further. If money truly follows power, and power follows scarcity, what happens to a man who decides ruthlessly to become rare? Because in the next part, we're going to expose the exact psychological mechanism that causes people to pay more, respect more, and chase harder the moment you step back. And once you see it, you won't be able to unsee how the game has been played against you your entire life. The moment you stop chasing approval, something unsettling happens. People start watching you instead. Here's the mechanism they never explain to you. the invisible switch that flips the moment you withdraw access. Human beings are not logical creatures first. We are pattern recognition machines. We scan behavior before we listen to words. And the fastest pattern the brain detects is this: who needs whom more? That single question determines respect, pricing, and power in every interaction, in business, in social circles, in negotiations, in money. When you are eager, you answer it for them. When you explain yourself, you answer it again. When you rush to prove value, you scream the answer, and the answer is never in your favor. The brain doesn't hear your intentions. It feels your urgency, and urgency signals dependence. Dependence is expensive for you and cheap for everyone else. This is why men who talk the most about their value are paid the least. Why men who justify their boundaries have none. Why men who announce their importance are quietly ignored. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Scarcity doesn't work because people are cruel. It works because uncertainty forces attention. When access to you is unlimited, the mind relaxes. When access becomes conditional, the mind activates. It leans forward, it starts calculating. It begins assigning weight. Silence creates tension. Distance creates gravity. Machiavelli understood this in power dynamics long before psychologists gave it names. A ruler who is always visible becomes ordinary. A ruler who appears selectively becomes myth. Modern money obeys the same law. Think about the men who control resources. They don't explain their schedule. They don't justify their decisions. They don't chase validation. They allow uncertainty to do the work for them. Now listen carefully. This is the trap most men fall into. They confuse being useful with being valuable. Useful men are everywhere. Valuable men are rare. Usefulness invites extraction. Value demands compensation. Every time you make yourself constantly available, you are signaling, "I am here to be used." And the system responds efficiently. It uses you, but the moment you pull back even slightly, the system reacts with resistance. People ask questions. They test you. They poke at your boundaries. This is not rejection. This is recalibration. They are adjusting to a new price point. And most men fail right here. They feel the tension and panic. They rush to reassure. They overcorrect. They explain. They apologize for boundaries, and in doing so, they collapse the entire structure. Scarcity only works if it is maintained without emotion. No anger, no drama, no speeches, just absence where there used to be access. This is why true power feels cold to the untrained eye, not because it lacks feeling, but because it refuses to leak it. Here's the brutal realization. You don't become expensive by demanding more. You become expensive by requiring less. Less validation, less approval, less immediate response. The less you need, the more the world offers. And this terrifies people who built their identity on being needed. Because when you stop chasing relevance, you force others to compete for your attention. In the next part, we're going to dismantle the biggest lie ever sold to ambitious men, that being liked leads to opportunity. What actually happens is far darker and far more profitable. Being liked feels powerful until you realize it makes you replaceable. Here's the lie that ruins ambitious men before they ever realize what happened. The lie whispered by teachers, managers, mentors, and motivational speakers alike. If people like you, opportunities will come. That sounds reasonable, comforting, civilized, and it is catastrophically wrong. Being liked does not create leverage. It creates permission. Permission for people to step closer than they should, to ask for favors they haven't earned, to negotiate your value downward without resistance. When people like you too much, they stop respecting your limits, because respect and affection are not the same currency. Machiavelli warned rulers about this centuries ago. A ruler who seeks love becomes hostage to it. A ruler who commands respect remains free. Modern money operates the same way. The man who is liked is invited. The man who is respected is paid. Watch carefully how this plays out. The nice man is always included, but never centered. He is present, but not prioritized. Consulted, but not decisive. Praised, but not promoted. Why? Because liking reduces friction, and friction is where power is tested. Money doesn't move through comfort, it moves through tension. Negotiations are not won by warmth, they are won by asymmetry, one side needing the outcome more than the other. The moment you are emotionally invested in being liked, you lose that asymmetry. People feel it instantly. They sense your hesitation, your willingness to bend, your fear of disapproval, and without saying a word, they adjust their behavior. Deadlines slip, offers shrink, our respect erodes quietly. Here's the part most men refuse to accept. You can be liked after you are respected, but never before. Respect comes from constraint, from limits, from the calm willingness to disappoint. The expensive man is not cruel. He is selective. He does not explain his no. He does not soften his boundaries. He does not over-justify his absence. And because of that, his presence gains weight. Think about how scarcity changes perception. A crowded restaurant feels ordinary. A fully booked restaurant feels elite. Same food, same staff, different signal. Your time works the same way. If everyone can reach you, no one values the moment they do. But when access requires patience, effort, or cost, every interaction feels heavier. Now here's where the internal battle begins. When you stop chasing approval, people will accuse you of changing. They'll say you're distant, arrogant, cold, different. This is not an observation. It's a negotiation tactic. They are attempting to restore the old price. And if you flinch here, if you rush to explain yourself, you confirm that the accusation worked. Power does not argue with perception. It lets perception settle. The man who holds his frame through discomfort emerges repriced. And this is where money begins to follow. Because money does not follow likability, it follows gravity. In the next part, we're going to expose why boundaries feel selfish to others, and why that emotional backlash is the clearest signal that you're finally doing something right. If setting boundaries makes people angry, you've just discovered your real value. Here's the paradox that confuses most men the first time they experience it. The moment you stop giving freely, you don't get ignored. You get resisted. And resistance is not rejection. Resistance is proof that something valuable has been restricted. When you begin to pull back, when you stop answering instantly, when you stop explaining every decision, when you stop making yourself emotionally available on demand, people don't calmly accept it. They react. They call it selfish. They call it ego. They call it not who you used to be. But notice what they never say. They never say, good for you, because boundaries expose entitlement. Every angry reaction is a receipt. It tells you exactly who benefited from your lack of limits. This is why boundaries feel immoral to men who were trained to be agreeable. You were taught that generosity without limits equals virtue. But in reality, unlimited generosity creates parasites, not allies. Machiavelli understood this flaw in human nature with brutal clarity. Men do not resent being ruled. They resent losing access. Power is not threatened by distance. It is threatened by familiarity. When you were always available, people built their plans around you. Your time became assumed. Your energy became expected. Your attention became free. So when you remove it, their system breaks. And broken systems always blame the missing component. Here's the psychological truth hiding underneath the backlash. When you set a boundary, you force others to confront their dependency. And dependency hates exposure, so they test you, they push, they guilt, they frame you as unreasonable. This is the initiation phase. Every man who ever rose in status passed through this moment. The moment where staying the same feels easier, but staying the same guarantees stagnation. Most men fail here. They soften, they explain, they compromise prematurely. And just like that, the old hierarchy snaps back into place, because boundaries are only real when they survive pressure. An expensive man does not enforce boundaries loudly. He enforces them consistently. No speeches, no emotional justification, no need to convince. He lets reality deliver the message. And slowly, something shifts. People adapt. They adjust expectations. They schedule differently. They treat his time with care. Not because he demanded respect, but because he demonstrated cost. Money responds to this shift immediately. Clients negotiate less. Opportunities become selective. Doors open quietly instead of loudly, because the market respects what cannot be rushed. Now here's the part that separates theory from transformation. Becoming expensive does not mean isolating yourself. It means curating access. You choose who gets proximity. You choose when energy is spent. You choose what earns your presence. And once those rules are clear, the chaos disappears. But the final barrier still remains, the most dangerous one of all, your own fear of being forgotten. In the next part, we're going to dismantle the illusion that visibility creates power, and why disappearing strategically is often the fastest way to multiply money. The fastest way to lose power is to be seen everywhere. The fastest way to gain it is to vanish on purpose. Here's the illusion that traps modern men. The belief that visibility equals relevance, that constant presence equals importance, that if you disappear, you'll be forgotten. That fear keeps men cheap, because the truth is far more unsettling. Overexposure kills authority. When people see you everywhere, they stop looking for you. When your voice fills every silence, it stops carrying weight. Scarcity doesn't erase you, it sharpens you. Machiavelli warned rulers about this long before digital noise existed. A leader who speaks too often weakens his own words. A leader who appears selectively turns every appearance into an event. Modern money obeys the same law. Look closely at the men who command high fees. They are not everywhere. They are not constantly posting, explaining, reacting. They surface with intention. They disappear without apology. And when they return, attention follows. Here's why this works on a psychological level. The human mind fills gaps with imagination, and imagination inflates value. When you remove yourself from constant visibility, people begin to speculate. Where did he go? What is he working on? Why isn't he available? Those questions do more work than any self-promotion ever could. But this tactic terrifies men who confuse attention with control, because when you disappear, you temporarily lose validation. No notifications, no reassurance, no instant feedback. And for men addicted to being needed, that silence feels like death. But silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure building. This is where most men sabotage themselves. They vanish, but then reappear too soon. They break the silence to reassure, to explain, to announce. And the spell collapses. Disappearance only works when it is complete and calm. No dramatic exits, no warnings, no emotional statements. You simply become unavailable, and something fascinating happens. People start waiting. Waiting is power. Waiting reorders priorities. Waiting creates anticipation. Waiting assigns importance. This is why high-status men don't chase opportunities. Opportunities circle them. But there's a darker layer here. One most motivational advice avoids. When you disappear, some people won't miss you. And that truth cuts deep because it forces you to confront a painful question. Was your presence valued or just convenient? This moment separates men who grow from men who regress. The man who can tolerate irrelevance for a season emerges with leverage. The man who panics and rushes back returns cheaper than before. Money respects patience more than effort. It flows toward men who can withstand quiet without self-betrayal. But disappearance alone is not enough. In the next part, we're going to expose the final transformation. How to return from absence in a way that permanently resets your price and makes negotiation tilt in your favor before a single word is spoken. Disappearing creates mystery, but returning correctly creates dominance. Most men think absence is the power move. It's not. Absence is preparation. The real leverage is in how you come back, because when you return the wrong way, you erase everything you built in silence. Let me explain. When you step away, when you stop responding instantly, when your presence becomes rare, the world recalibrates without you. People adjust schedules, they fill gaps, they make assumptions, and then one day you reappear. This moment is dangerous. If you return the same man you were before, same energy, same availability, same eagerness, you signal that the absence meant nothing, and the price collapses. But if you return changed, not louder, not arrogant, just more deliberate, something irreversible happens. The hierarchy locks. Here is the rule most men never learn. You never return to where you left off. You return above it, or not at all. This is where money multiplies, because money is not convinced by words. It is convinced by posture. The expensive man does not reintroduce himself. He does not explain what he was doing. He does not apologize for the gap. He acts as if the absence was normal, as if access was never guaranteed. And the room feels it. There's a subtle shift when a man returns with fewer words, with slower movements, with decisions already made. People stop negotiating with him and start negotiating around him. That is authority. Most men sabotage this moment by oversharing. They tell everyone what they were building. They seek validation for the absence. They want reassurance that disappearing was worth it. And in doing so, they give away the power again. Power never explains its transformation. It lets results speak or remain silent. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When you return unavailable, some doors will close permanently. People who benefited from your cheap access will drift away. This is not loss. This is filtration. The men who rise in wealth don't accumulate contacts. They accumulate alignment. Fewer conversations, higher stakes. When you re-enter selectively, every interaction feels heavier. Meetings shorten. Offers sharpen. Deadlines tighten. Because uncertainty has trained people to take you seriously. Now here's the final psychological switch. When people realize your time must be earned, they stop wasting it. When they realize your attention is conditional, they stop abusing it. And when they realize your presence is rare, they pay to secure it. This is why money flows faster to men who say less, why investors trust calm, why authority feels quiet. But there is still one last barrier, the most dangerous one, the internal urge to prove you deserve the new price. In the next part, we are going to dismantle the final trap. Why the moment you try to justify your value, you instantly lose it. And once you see this, you'll understand why truly powerful men never argue for their worth. The moment you explain your value, you quietly confess that it isn't obvious. This is the final trap, the most seductive one, the one that destroys men right at the edge of power, after you've set boundaries, after you've disappeared, after you've returned with gravity. There comes a moment when someone challenges your price, not always with words, sometimes with hesitation, sometimes with, "Are you sure?" sometimes with silence. And instinct kicks in. You feel the urge to justify, to list credentials, to explain effort, to prove you're worth it. That single impulse is where everything collapses, because value that needs explanation is already discounted. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. A ruler who defends his authority reveals doubt. A ruler who remains unmoved forces belief. Money responds the same way. The expensive man does not argue for his worth. He lets refusal do the talking. This is what separates high earners from strugglers. Not intelligence, not talent, not even opportunity, but tolerance for rejection. Most men fear rejection because they tie it to identity. They think, if they say no, it means I'm not enough. The powerful man understands something else. Rejection is simply a misalignment of price and readiness. He doesn't chase the unready. He doesn't negotiate himself downward. He doesn't soften to be chosen. He waits, and waiting is a filter. Here's what happens when you don't justify. Some people walk away immediately, and that hurts until you understand what just happened. They were never going to pay your true price. They were only testing how cheaply they could get you. When you refuse to explain, you force a binary decision: pay or leave. This clarity is terrifying to men who built their life on approval, because approval thrives in ambiguity. But money thrives in certainty. The more certain you are of your boundaries, the less convincing you need to be. This is why the calmest man in the room often controls the outcome. He has already decided what he will accept. No tension, no desperation, no emotional leakage. And others feel it. They may not like it, but they respect it. And respect is what unlocks premium outcomes. Here's the reframe that changes everything. You are not selling yourself. You are offering access. Access to your time, your focus, your expertise, your presence. And access is either earned or it doesn't happen. The moment you argue for access, you convert yourself into a commodity. The moment you remain silent, you become a standard. Now there is only one final step left, the step most men never reach, because it requires you to let go of chasing money entirely. In the final part, we're going to reveal the ultimate inversion. Why the men who multiply money the fastest stop trying to attract it at all. And when you understand this, you'll realize the game was never about money in the first place. The moment you stop chasing money, it starts positioning itself around you. Here is the final inversion, the one that feels backward until it clicks. And once it does, you can never return to how you lived before. Men who multiply money the fastest do not pursue it directly. They pursue position. Because money is not a goal, it is a consequence, a shadow cast by authority. When you chase money, you reveal urgency. When you build authority, money reveals itself. This is the ultimate Machiavellian lesson for the modern world. Power does not announce desire, it creates gravity, and gravity pulls resources, people, and opportunity without effort. Think about every man you've ever seen rise rapidly, not slowly, not incrementally, but suddenly. What changed wasn't his work ethic, it was his frame. He stopped optimizing for acceptance. He stopped negotiating himself. He stopped explaining. He became a fixed point. Others adjusted around him. This is why true wealth feels calm, unrushed, almost indifferent, because when your boundaries are immovable, your standards consistent, and your presence rare, money has no leverage over you, and paradoxically, that's when it offers itself. Here is the final truth most men resist. Money can sense desperation, the way blood attracts sharks, but it responds to indifference with obedience. The expensive man is not reckless. He is self-contained. He does not need the deal. He does not fear the loss. He does not rush the outcome. And because of that, he wins more often than he loses. This is why Machiavelli's ideas survive centuries later, because human psychology has not evolved past hierarchy. Only its costumes have changed. Digital platforms, corporate titles, luxury symbols, different masks, same instincts. If you want to multiply money, you must first multiply distance. Distance between you and desperation. Distance between you and validation. Distance between you and cheap access. When you do that, something irreversible happens. You stop asking what the world will give you, and the world starts asking what it costs to reach you. That is the shift. That is the line between men who grind endlessly and men who are sought. Money does not seek goodness. It does not seek effort. It does not seek fairness. It seeks authority. And authority belongs to the man who behaves as if his presence is already paid for. Now the question is no longer whether this works. The question is whether you're willing to tolerate the silence, the discomfort, and the temporary loneliness it takes to become expensive. Because once you cross that threshold, there is no going back to being cheap.